Welcome back to Windows and Mirrors, a podcast produced by the Division of Equity and Inclusion. In today's episode, we have Cindy Barrios, a research participant for the Cal Nerds program, who recently graduated from Cal with a degree in molecular biology. In this episode, she talks about her current research, the value of her education as an illegal immigrant, and her opinions on the gender gap in STEM fields. This is her story.
I just graduated in May as a molecular environmental biologist with an emphasis in microbiology. So I am currently in a project where I'm studying microbes and specifically actinobacteria, which are the main producers of antibiotics. So I do, for instance, right now I have a sample from Oklahoma, and I'm basically isolating the bacteria that are in that sample and trying to test it against different, for instance, E. coli or bacillus to see if the bacteria that I'm going after produce some kind of antibiotics or antifungals to kill bacillus or E. coli or other harmful bacteria. So it's more like I do the research to figure it out, which bacteria are there, what are they producing, and can we study this further, looking at the compounds. So it's really cool.
What kind of sparked the interest of molecular biology and just your interest in bacteria and such?
So I grew up in a third world country, and there was one time actually where I went to school, and most of my classmates, I was probably second, third grade, and most of my classes weren't there. So I was just as a kid, you're just trying to grasp what's happening, where are my friends? And then the professor was oh, there was an outbreak of dengue fever, and most of your friends are having issues with that, and they went over telling us what to do, so we wouldn't have to go through that. A few years later, my mom got dengue as well. So ever since I was at a very young age, I was introduced to that kind of there are microbes out there. So I was always interested in how that you didn't see them, you don't see this cold, you don't see any of that, yet it affects you. So as I was getting older, I was realizing that was something that it wasn't so much as scary, it was more ooh, how does this work, and where are they, how do they live? And so now I'm really interested in bacteria.
That's cool. I mean, not the whole situation with the dengue fever, but the fact that you want to explore the ins and outs of what's causing these illnesses. Were you always like this?
I was an illegal immigrant for 8 years. So when I graduated from high school, I wasn't able to go to community college. So you weren't able to, I graduated from high school, and all I was able to do was just work, So sometimes, I guess I didn't have that during that time, and now I'm able to go to school. So I think I have a different perspective of education. It's not so much of, oh, this is what I need to do next. It's more I'm gifted. I have this privilege, and I'm willing to take advantage of it. So yeah, I think not being able to go to school in the United States kind of gave me that perspective of it made me look at things a little different. So yeah.
And what's your opinion currently right now in this atmosphere where a lot of students are struggling just to get their education funded or just pursue education because of not having the proper paperwork?
That's a great question. When I graduated from high school, I was a housekeeper right afterwards. And as Hispanic, Latina, science was not even an idea or even a choice that I had. So I did that for a few years. And then once I was able to start school, I started in a community college, taking classes, learning the language. It was hard, but if it wasn't for the professors and the people around me saying, like, hey, try this, try that, like, just bringing up the concept of a STEM and in my community, I don't think I would be here, and I would have never realized that I had this passion for bacteria. Once I realized that the DREAM Act came through and a lot of students were able to do that, I was so happy. It's like I wouldn't say wasted, but I could have done all of what I'm doing at a very earlier age, like 18, 19. I had to wait until I was 25, 26 to start school. And that's 5 years that I wasn't in. We live in, number one, we live in United States. That's kind of absurd to me that you can't go to school just because you don't have the legal papers. Like, it makes no sense, and there's so many kids that have so much potential. And, like, for instance, for me, I didn't know I had that. I didn't know I was going to be interested in what I'm interested right now. So not being able to not even expose them into it, like, we as a society, we are the future. They are the future. Kids are the future. And the more they're exposed into environmental issues, the more they're exposed into engineering and STEM fields and arts, you're going to have a society that is educated and can actually solve problems instead of looking at problems and being like, well, yeah, there's a problem, but we don't know. We wait until someone else figures it out. And I think now we're in a group of students and a group of environments where we're no longer looking at, well, look at the big guy and he has to figure it out. I think more and more you're starting to see students and young people just being like, I'm going to try to figure it out. Let me see what I can do in my community. So I think education, I think being able to provide them that at least tools allows them to start thinking of bigger issues and how they can, be part of the problem solving.
How do you think we could, like, break those barriers?
It's hard, it's difficult, and it doesn't help. Like, for instance, I'm going to tell you a story. So I was in my community college, and I was a pre-nurse before I decided to do microbiology. And I remember, like, most of then I became a tutor for pre-nursing students taking anatomy and physiology. And every time I saw a pre-engineer, for instance, they would just kind of look at me like, oh, you're the biologist, like you focus on biology, we're hardcore mathematicians, we do like really heavy duty math, we do calculus. So at first I was really intimidated because I was like, oh man, calculus is so hard. I don't know if I'm possible, like I can do that. And then later on I realized, like, I don't know if I want to be a nurse. Like, I like it, but I like more science, like heavy duty research. But I need to take this class of calculus. How am I going to do that? I was just so scared. And then I was like, okay, well, let me just take calculus, the first calculus, and see how I did or how I do in it. And I took it and I passed it. And then I was like, oh, okay, that wasn't too hard. And then I took the next class and I passed it. I was like, okay, let me take the next calculus class. And I took it and I passed it. And I was like, okay, well, let me try physics, And it just, even though I didn't have a role model, to me, just the idea of me not being able to do something was just like, why? Why can't I? And I think that's something that maybe because I was an older student, and I had more experience, and I had been told so many times that I can't do something, and I did it. That gave me the courage to go after calculus and physics and organic chemistry and take all these other classes. Maybe when I was a lot younger, maybe when I was 18, I wouldn't have done it, maybe. Who knows? But I think what we're doing right now, just talking, and other students or other girls seeing it, like, hey, she's a scientist, and she's at Berkeley, and she's doing research, and just exposing kids. I think if I would have been more exposed during high school, maybe I would have thought about it differently. But as an older student at 25 years, it was just not right for me. Like, why? Who are you to tell me that I can't do calculus or physics? Or
you ever see yourself going back home and maybe, like,
As a matter of fact, yes. I emailed one of my previous professors from community college, and I was like, hey, can I teach a class? And so yeah, I go every break. I go and just at least try to talk to one of the classes and tell them, like, hey, I was sitting there just a year ago or 2 years ago in the same chemistry class, and just to kind of get them into, you can do this, like, you shouldn't limit yourself.
Cindy is currently traveling abroad to Europe, where she is going to present her research to a panel in Germany. Although Cindy has faced constant obstacles and criticisms, she has been able to overcome them and is a role model to those who are in the same position. This has been another episode of Windows and Mirrors. I'm your host, Gabriel Gonzalez, and thanks for listening.